humanist perspective presented by the New Orleans Secular Humanist Association, following our few principles of humanism.
We're committed to the use of science and reason for understanding the universe and for solving human problems. We're skeptical of untested claims of knowledge, but we're open to new ideas.
We are concerned with securing justice and fairness in society and in ending intolerance and discrimination. We are committed to the total separation of religion and government.
We affirm humanism as a realistic alternative to the theologies of despair and the ideologies of violence. We reject the concept of an afterlife and believe in living a full and rewarding life here and now.
We value and respect each individual's right to judge and lead their lives according to their own position, as long as it's respectful of other people, living in a free society.
We hope you enjoy today's program and others in the weeks to follow. Hello again. This is Harry Greenberger. I'm the host for this show and the president of the New Orleans Secular Humanist Association. Today, my guest I might describe as a surprise guest, because it's not a surprise to me, but it may be to you folks who are watching, and my guest is Apostle Hosea. We have met each other many times in the past, because Apostle Hosea has his own shows on public access TV and has invited me as a guest on his show that was called The Barbershop. And so I'm returning the favor, and we're going to talk about Apostle Hosea, and this conversation may go in any direction. But first, I would like to ask you how one becomes an apostle and how you came to be an apostle.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Harry. First of all, I'd like to thank you for inviting me here today. Glad to have you. Okay, and I'd like to say hello to New Orleans and whosoever else will see this show, as we usually use in a greeting, shalom, shalom, which means peace, abundant peace, peace unto you all that listen to my voice. All right. Well, tell us, how did you become an apostle? Okay, well, that was a twofold. You say, how I became to be an apostle, and what was other? And how does anyone become an apostle? Okay. Well, Mr. Harry, do you know the definition of an apostle, even though you asked me the question? I'll let you define it for me and our audience. Okay. Well, Mr. Harry, I am an apostle because this great divine being that is the cause of everything that is righteous made me an apostle and called me to be an apostle. In Hebrew, we use the term shalichim. That means one who was sent. And the apostles, as generally known to people following various Judeo-Christian religions, those apostles became that way because because God called them to do it. Is that what you're saying? Well, yes, but if you don't mind, I mean no offense. Even though you use the term Judaism, the correct term, as far as the way I have been trained, would be Judaism, and also know that you have confided in me as far as your heritage, your background, as far as your family line goes way back in history, as in Judaism, as far as the nation of Israel, I would presume? Well, all I know is it is my heritage, of which I'm very proud. It just never became my religion. Right. But yes, I'm sure if I were able to do the genealogy, it would go way back. I see. Okay, well, to get back on your statement, how did I become an apostle? Well, that great being that you call God, that being has a name like you have a name, Harry. And in the Hebraic term of the original language that was given to mankind before mankind was given different other forms of language, but by that same creator, the English alphabet of that being that you call God would be YHWH, or in Hebrew, Yud-He Vadhe, that we would pronounce Yahweh. So it was Yahweh that eventually called me and gave me the ancient moral understanding how people should live as human beings, as far as similar to the concepts that you guys use as humanists, as far as respecting another individual, and that we are, in a sense, masters of our own destiny. Well, you guys also have whether you know it or not, but you may differ, you guys use that universal moral concept that goes way back from the beginning of time, that are actually Yahweh thoughts, not religion, but Yahweh thoughts as far as each human being innate within themselves. We all have that principle to where we can be moral and good people. So
yes, I'm glad that you recognize that, because there are many people who say if you do not accept the supernatural, you have no basis for morality. But I will say this: we secular humanists and atheists are as moral, or perhaps more moral, than a lot of people who proclaim to be religious. Now, back to your call from Yahweh. At what age did you get this call?
Well, Harry, at the age of 6, it was prophesied or foretold. You may like the term foretold. 2 old men on the borderline of Louisiana and Mississippi foretold that one day I would become a preacher.
All right. Now, at that time, I presume that you had not accepted Judaism, and yet, do you now consider yourself a Jew?
No, that would be the incorrect word. I didn't. The correct word would be Hebrewism. I mean, Judaism is just a terminology like Baptist, Methodist, Christianity.
But you consider yourself then a follower of Hebrewism.
Right. I consider myself, I am a follower and a believer of the moral principles that Yahweh Elohim has passed down from the beginning of the time. Yes, I am an apostle that expound. Matter of fact, that show that you critiqued the other day on what most people call the commandments. I was trained where that's one of the criteria of the calling. I must know the basic principles that are all around the world, no matter what you may call yourself. You may call yourself a Hindu, Buddhist, humanist, whatever else they have out there. But everyone in society universally, have those same Hebraic thoughts of Yahweh, even though they may not know it.
Let me say most of them, but not all of them.
Right.
All right. So it was prophesied that you were going to become a preacher.
Right.
When did you get the call yourself?
Okay. Well.
And in what form did it come?
Well, first, like I said, it started when I was 6 years old. It was prophesied, and still doing the basics. Even as a child, my mother and my father brought me up in some form of standards of what you guys call the King James Version of the Hebrew Scriptures, that I was just like every common person somewhat, but I never believed in the writings. I never lived that moral life. But the seed was planted, not into the age of 20 when I was actually called, where I heard an audible voice. Now, you may have never experienced that. That's why you still call yourself a humanist. But I'm saying from my experience, and I mean no disrespect. You only know the shoes that you walked in just as well as I know those shoes I walked in.
As a very young man, you say in your 20s, you actually had the call.
Right, I had the audible call.
All right, which said to you, do what?
Well, it was just actually what happened. I had what we call, that you read in the Hebrew Scriptures. All through the Hebrew Scriptures, at times they record human beings that have been chosen that actually see, which I would presume that you have no knowledge of, or you don't believe because you never experienced what they call angels, or in Hebrew malaks. I actually had a visitation of what you would call supernatural being from another realm appear, visible like these lights that are very bright like this here, but even brighter than the sun, one day appeared to me and called my name 3 times, audible, and then spiritual knowledge had been downloaded in my intellect until after once I go to a certain stage from 20 years old, within 10 years, I followed the moral standards of those scriptures. So at the age of 30, then I became a preacher. And then from that, because I walked those moral standards, some standards that you believe in, then I was eventually elevated to apostle, and that brought me to a whole different level to where some people say, like even on this cup, it has the world greatest. Unofficially, not on paper, but unofficially, there are rumors that people say that the apostle coming from New Orleans is one of the greatest enlightened of people in this decade as far as deciphering Hebrew scriptures and Bible code. So that's what apostle do. He's sent with a special message that stands out among all.
Now, do you have a church, or how do you get the message out to the people?
Okay, well, as you said in the opening show, I'm fortunate, just like you, to be chosen in this day and time in New Orleans, to where I'm a producer, just like you, on cable access, to where I have a show where I can speak, reach many, many people from the television. And as far as a church, there's only one church, and that is those that follow those moral standards in the Hebraic scriptures, that follow the moral standards of Yahweh thoughts, where Yeshua engraft them in his church. So I have no church, but I have become a part of the Hebrew church, the church of Yeshua HaMashiach.
And then do you accept what is written in some version of the Old and New Testaments? Do you accept all of that literally or not?
Well, I accept the way I put it, Harry. The way I've been trained, I'm not your average human being in this day and time. Each individual in their life, the reason why they go to high school, then college, then beyond that is they study to improve themselves. And as an apostle, the way I have been trained in this day and time, I've been trained not just in the common understanding of the Hebrew scriptures, but I went beyond it to where I have ancient knowledge that the average professor, the average scholar, the average minister don't even have that concept, because I'm trained from the ancient Hebrew of a pure source of the scriptures. Just like when you critiqued the show just the other day, you said, Apostle, I saw some terminology of words in English alphabets, but they had Hebraic terms that you had never seen before. So I gave you all that information to say, I don't accept some copies of the Hebrew translation because they're inferior and at times they are faulty.
But you're working from some more original translations than what may be popular today. Although I think you told me the message is the same. Is that right?
Yes, I'm coming from a more pure source. That is true, but no, the message is not the same from your basic Christianity or Judaism, any other kind of religious concept. No, it's not the same. It stands out among others. Is whether or not all other messages reach that standard, because I come from a pure Hebraic source.
But back to my question. Do you, with whatever version of the writings you choose to work from, do you accept it as literally true? Starting with the Garden of Eden and then all the way through the miracles of Christ. Do you have any reservations about any of that?
When it's written in a proper text, I have no reservations. If I see a translation that says someone by the name of Jesus, the Christ, died on a tree, I would know that would be a faulty translation of the original Hebrew, because there was no one named Jesus or even the Christ at that time. When an individual did die that was crucified, fulfilling Isaiah 53, that man name was, that human being, not a God, but that human being name was Yeshua. And he was not traditionally a Caucasian with blue eyes and blonde hair. So unless it's written in the pure, proper text, I would not accept, because I know that there's some corrupt translations, but wherever there's a translation corrupt, there's somewhere on the planet where it's written correctly.
Well, we are close to the Christmas season now, and there are millions of people who totally accept the story of Jesus Christ, the virgin birth, and his death and resurrection. You're saying that that's not a correct story? Is that what you're saying?
No, what I'm saying, Harry, the formula, it is true, Miriam, if you want to say Mary, did become pregnant, and she did birth the baby in a stable, okay, but Mary didn't name the child Jesus. That part is incorrect. And two, like you say, the term Christmas is coming up. In Christianity, those people are what we call pagans, because they have statues that they even bow down to. And even, Harry, you know, as a humanist, or any sane human being, know that a statue that you make have no power. So these Christians, they reverence and they have respect to these statues, of a statue of a Mary and a statue representing some fictional God-man Jesus. And two, Harry, the scriptures plainly say this other thing on the Christmas thing, what they call the nativity, because the Christians are pagan idol worshippers and don't know it because they're not intelligent and smart like you and I, just reading along that those statues have no power. And the second thing, Harry, then I give it back to you. If you read the Hebraic scriptures, it would tell you that when Mary birthed her baby in the stable, it was just the shepherds that came. The scriptures would tell you that the men that came from the east came 2 years later. So usually anything that Christianity say along following Roman Catholicism, I usually don't accept, because it's usually faulty anyhow. I follow line upon line and precept on precept.
All right. Now, so there is much in the New Testament which you have some question about. How about what's in the Old Testament?
Okay, as far as what you call
starting with the Garden of Eden and the original sin, is that part of your understanding? Well,
of course. I mean, but the understanding I have, you have never heard before. You've only heard it from the Christianity version.
You're right. Now, briefly, what is your version of how human beings all came about?
Okay, you remember that time we talked, when I first met you years ago, we had a little brief conversation, and who would ever thought that we would be here today? And we talked about, well, you brought up the Big Bang.
Yeah.
Remember that? And and you said, well, you say everything just happened with the Big Bang, and then you went on after the Big Bang, you went on certain events in history that mankind actually have an actual factual record on. Well, that part, and I was saying, well, Harry, what you have to understand, you open up with the Big Bang, and then you really can't define it. At least I thought you really couldn't define it in my mind, regardless of what you thought. But what I had said, that Big Bang was actually Yahweh saying, let there be. So that was the Big Bang. So man did not come from a monkey like most Caucasian scientists say, or Europeans say. Mankind was first created because Elohim Yahweh said, I would create a being in this realm that we see in this world, here in the physical world, opposite of the spirit being that only few human beings ever get a chance to see.
Well, the Bible says that God created man in his image. And we, people who rely on science and reason, say man came through a series of natural evolution. Do you reject the entire theory of evolution?
Could you give me a little more insight on as far as your terminology, as far as how mankind was created, before I answer, if you don't mind?
Yeah.
Because I'm doing a lot of the talking. But I would like the viewers to, some viewers that may never watch your show will watch this time because the Apostles was on. So enlighten the audience and enlighten me to more of your concept.
But I want you to know the way I run my show is to let the guest say as much as he wants to say.
Oh, I didn't know that. Thank you.
All right, but let me just say this. I am not a scientist, nor am I a student of religion.
Okay.
But I do rely on logic and reason and things that can be demonstrated and proven. And so I have found the what is called the theory of evolution through natural processes to be supportable and supported by all sorts of evidence. And you want to know where, in my opinion, mankind came from?
Yes, yes, sir.
From an early life form which evolved over millions of years, maybe billions of years, evolved step by step so that each new change made it more adaptable to its environment. And then, ultimately this one-cell creature developed into something larger and more complicated until it reached where we are today, which is that we are a very, very complicated living organism.
Okay, well, thank you for humbling yourself. Like you say, usually it's the other way around. You allow your guests to speak as much as possible. Most people don't do that. So I thank you as a human being to another human being. I respect that.
Well, that's why you're here.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Harry. Now I will answer your question real quick because I know the time is almost running out. Mankind made an image of Yahweh. What that means is, Mr. Harry, from my experience that I've learned, to answer that, Almighty Yahweh is a spirit being, and when you read the Hebrew scriptures in the 4th chapter of Yachanan, what people call John, Yeshua speaks to the woman at the well, and he tells the woman at the well that Yahweh is a spirit being. Closing with that, one day I died, and this is to answer your question, how man is in the image. You know about the physical already. You understand that, but if you haven't experienced, it's the spiritual part. Example, one day, what you call death, I died to where they had no more conscience in the physical. But the moment as a spirit being, because I'm in the image of the flesh as far as what you understand, that you understand, but as a spirit being, how I'm in the image of Yahweh, because the physical turns back to dust. When I, as a spirit soul, separated from my physical soul self, I hovered over my body and I saw people standing around the other part of me that is of the earth. So how's man in the image of Yahweh? We are also a spirit being. That's what the writer means when it says, let us now make after man was made physically from the dust, the molecular structure of dust became flesh. Then Yahweh say, now let me breathe, since Yahweh the spirit being, he breathed his spirit essence, a spirit soul within inside the physical soul. So that's how mankind is in the image of Yahweh. And I would verify that because once I experienced what I used to read about, when I died in the physical, I still existed as a spirit being, and I saw myself, other part of me laying on the ground. And so that's how man is in the image of Yahweh.
I won't question that you had that experience. I will question whether your interpretation of what happened is what actually happened. As far as I have seen any sort of studies or any kind of information, we are not two separate things. We're not body and soul. We're all one thing. And when our brain is dead, we are no more. And that is the way that we secular people will view it, which is why, of course, we propose that we should live this life, the only one we're going to have, into the fullest extent, and not live this life in preparation for something better to come after we're dead. So at this point, I don't question that you had your experience. I question your interpretation of it.
Well, and you know something, Mr. Harry, even though you say call you Harry,
Yes.
but it's just that respect that I have for you as a human being. I'm pretty sure you reciprocate that. That's why I'm here, and that's why I invited you on the show that I'm fortunate to do. I don't doubt that that's what you believe, what you say, because that's your experience. And like you say, you've heard the old cliche, you never truly know what a man has been through until you walk in his shoes. That's your experience. At one time, I also thought just like you until I experienced a different situation. Even though I read about it, that was written over 6,000 years ago, the concept that we are a spirit soul and a physical soul together as one being. So I don't doubt that you You do believe that, and you're correct from your experience. But if you ever have the experience that I had, then you would also understand like me. So it is what it is, Harry.
Well, now let me ask you this, because I did watch your show, your most recent show.
Yes, sir.
Having to do a lot with the commandments.
Yes, sir. Moral
and the violation of them had a very severe result. You're going to spend eternity in hell. And including
as a spirit being outside of the physical body.
Now, I would have to say, your soul, your spirit's going to spend eternity in a very hot place. Now, if I, as you know, reject the entire concept of a supernatural, am I condemned now to spend eternity in hell?
Okay, well, Harry, it's like this here. To answer it, let me answer it this way, okay? We have about 2 minutes left.
Yeah, we have a few.
Okay, in this realm that we see, there are consequences. If morally, those concepts that precepts you believe in, if someone outright murder a person or rob someone, there are laws by this world that you believe in the physical, correct? That there are consequences where you can get locked up.
You can go to jail.
Okay, also as a spirit being, the spirit world is, the physical world is just the opposite and duplicate of the spirit realm. There's also consequences once you as a spirit soul leave out your physical body. There are consequences if you did not live the principal concepts of Yahweh on a moral level. So even though you don't believe, you may not believe in Yahweh or even Yeshua, but yet you follow those standards, those moral standards of being a decent human being by not stealing, by not robbing, and those basic concepts of the commandments. Whether you know it or not, Harry, you would actually get a free pass. Closing with this here, Revelation chapter 20, verse 12 says, and then the end will come.
Okay.
And the books will be open when mankind will be judged according to its deeds, Harry. The same principles basically that you believe in, except for a few you don't. But the issue is if you live a moral life, Harry, whether you know it or not, you will see.
I'm counting on the free pass.
I understand that.
But from what I have heard from you, those people who worship idols,
yes, statues, yes, Harry,
they are condemned to hell. Is that correct?
Right. Fornicators, Harry, people that have sex and not married. Also, adulterers, people that snatch babies out of women and murder them. Yes, there are consequences just like the physical world. Yes, Harry.
All right. Well, I think we've had an interesting half hour.
Thank you.
And I think our audience has learned something about you and our reaction to you. And I want to thank you for being here.
Thank you. It was a pleasure, Harry.
Okay. And I want to thank the folks who are watching our show and hope that we will see you here on a regular basis.